Welcome the anointed ones. The moment you stop being used is the moment they start calling you difficult. Unknown, but probably someone who finally found their damn peace. Let me tell you a fact most people will never admit out loud. People don't love you for who you are. They love you for how much of yourself you're willing to give away. And chosen one, let's be brutally clear. You've been giving out free samples of royalty energy in a marketplace full of counterfeit souls. While you were out here bleeding kindness, some folks were filling their cups with your compassion and calling it their own wine. They didn't just take advantage, they made you their emotional Amazon Prime. Fast delivery, no gratitude, and God forbid you run out of stock for one day. But guess what? That season is over. You're no longer the healing station for broken people who refuse to change their ways. You're done being the generator in a blackout zone full of people too lazy to pay their light bill. This isn't just about setting boundaries. This is about reversing the roles. Because from this moment forward, they don't get to sip from your cup if they helped break it. So sit back, breathe deep, and grab your crown off the floor, because today we're tearing down the altar they built with your self-worth. And you, chosen one, are finally walking out of the temple. Let's go. Number one, they didn't love you, they studied you. They didn't love you, they studied you. That's the cold truth most chosen ones take years to realize. You weren't embraced for your soul. You were observed for your energy. You were never in an equal bond. You were the experiment, the muse, the access point. While you thought you were building something real, they were taking notes, adjusting their masks, learning your triggers, your kindness limits, your patience threshold. They weren't interested in loving you. They were interested in decoding you. And the moment they figured you out, that's when the manipulation started. They knew exactly how to get what they wanted without looking like the villain. They mirrored your language, your wounds, your values. They borrowed your light to look holy, borrowed your depth to appear wise, and borrowed your kindness to cloak their intentions. And because you were sincere, you thought they were too. But what they wanted was never connection. It was control. And the better they understood you, the more strategic their exploitation became. The worst part, you mistook their attention for intimacy. You thought being studied was being loved. You thought their curiosity meant they cared. But it wasn't about caring. It was about calculating. They wanted to learn how you operated so they could hijack the system. You were a walking source code, and they were trying to rewrite the program to serve their needs. That's why they got so angry when you pulled away, because the moment you became unpredictable, they lost their hold. They weren't mourning the loss of you. They were panicking about losing access to what you gave. This is the kind of truth that doesn't come with closure, but it comes with clarity. And now that you see it, you don't owe them another explanation, another conversation, or another second of your spirit. They didn't love you, they studied you, but class is dismissed. Number two, your empathy was a drug and they were addicted. Your empathy was never just kindness to them. It was a drug. They were hooked on it, addicted. The way you forgave, the way you gave people chances even when they didn't deserve it, the way you understood things no one ever said out loud, that became their high. And like any addict, they weren't grateful for the supply. They were entitled to it. They came back every time they messed up, knowing you'd be there, knowing you'd clean up the mess, knowing you'd find some deeper reason to explain away their behavior. To them, that was your role. You became their emotional rehab center. Every time life humbled them, they came crawling back to your energy, not to change, but to recharge. They needed that hit of your compassion to feel better about themselves, and the crazy thing is, they never really wanted to heal. Healing would mean they wouldn't need you anymore. And they liked needing you. It made them feel powerful to know they could fall apart, disappear, disrespect you, and still get your warmth, still get access to your energy, still get your best even after they gave you their worst. But what they didn't expect was for you to finally see it, to finally wake up and realize that your empathy isn't supposed to be a free-for-all, that not everyone deserves access to your soul, that just because you can understand someone's pain doesn't mean you have to keep letting them cause yours. That's the withdrawal they're feeling now. It's not love they miss, it's the comfort. It's the emotional anesthesia you provided. It's the peace you brought into their chaos. They're calling you cold now because the drug is gone. But you're not cold. You're clean. And now they're shaking, desperate, calling, apologizing. But it's not real. It's just the symptoms. They're not looking for change. They're looking for a refill. But this time the pharmacy is closed. Number 3, they didn't steal your time. They robbed your future. They didn't just waste your time. They hijacked your future. That's the part that stings the most. You thought you were building a life, healing together, growing side by side. But they were never interested in growing with you. They were stalling you, delaying your evolution, distracting you just enough so you wouldn't realize how close you were to breaking free, to stepping into something greater. They weren't a partner. They were a detour. Every time you got a little stronger, a little clearer, a little more focused, they'd pull you back into the fog. Drama, guilt, sabotage, whatever it took to slow you down. Because deep down they saw where you were headed. They saw the greatness on you before you even knew what to call it. And that terrified them. Your healing exposed their refusal to grow. Your light made their shadows louder. And so they made it their mission to keep you small, not with force, but with emotional manipulation. They played on your loyalty, your empathy, your fear of being alone. It wasn't random. It was calculated. They didn't want you to wake up and realize how much of your life was spent catering to their wounds. They didn't want you to recognize that you were constantly putting your purpose on pause just to keep the peace. But now the pause button is broken. Now you're back on your path, and they're the ones watching from behind. It's not just about moving on, it's about reclaiming what they stole while pretending to care. The dreams you buried, the goals you delayed, the years you spent second-guessing yourself because they made you feel like too much. That's what you're taking back now. And no, you're not bitter, you're aware you've outgrown the trap. And while they thought they derailed you for good, all they did was delay the inevitable. The future is yours again, and this time nobody's holding the map but you. Number 4. You were the power grid they just plugged in. They never came with their own power. They came with empty batteries and a smile. At first it looked like love, it looked like support. They mirrored your passions, your dreams, your language, and you mistook that for alignment. But what they were really doing was plugging into your energy source. You were the one generating the warmth, the creativity, the vision, the emotional safety. They just tapped in and made it look mutual. It wasn't. You'd be lit up with ideas and suddenly they had motivation. You'd be focused on growth and suddenly they had ambition. But the moment you got drained, they disappeared. Because they weren't actually building anything with you. They were feeding off of what you were already building. You were the fire and they were just collecting heat. You noticed how they only showed up when things were going well for you. You'd get a win and suddenly they were close. You'd hit a low and suddenly they were busy. They weren't there for you. They were there for the glow. And the most twisted part? They'd act like they were doing you a favor, like their presence was a blessing. But in reality, your spirit was the only thing powering the connection. They brought nothing but emotional extension cords and a good disguise, but you finally pulled the plug, and now the silence is loud. The phone calls stopped, the energy shifted, and they're scrambling, not because they miss you, but because they miss what you gave them without question. You were the generator behind their sense of purpose, behind their temporary confidence. Now that you're unavailable, they're realizing they never had any power of their own. That blackout you're hearing? That's the sound of their supply running out. They were never independent. They were never as strong or centered as they pretended. Without your current, they don't know how to function. And that's not your problem anymore. Number 5, you outgrew their manipulation scripts. They had a formula, a pattern. The same lines, the same guilt trips, the same silent treatments and emotional threats. They repeated it like a script, confident it would work every time. And for a while it did. Because you cared. You loved deeply. You wanted to believe they'd change, so you played your part. They pulled the strings, and you responded. They'd twist your words, and suddenly you were apologizing for something they did. They'd create chaos, then paint themselves as the victim. You were stuck in a show you didn't audition for. But then something shifted. Slowly, painfully, You started seeing the routine for what it was. A performance. Not real love. Not real respect. Just manipulation dressed up as concern. You noticed how every time you set a boundary, they panicked. How every time you got quiet to process, they accused you of being selfish. You saw how they needed you to feel confused for them to feel in control. And once you recognized the tricks, they lost their power. You stopped reacting. You stopped explaining. You stopped justifying your feelings. And that's when everything changed. Because they weren't equipped for the version of you that wasn't buying the illusion. You weren't triggered. You were unmoved. You weren't explaining. You were exiting. And they had no script for that. You outgrew the stage. You stopped playing the role of the understanding one, the forgiver, the emotional sponge. You stopped letting them direct your emotions. And when you walked away, the audience noticed. They saw the manipulator exposed. No more applause, just silence and awkward stares. The magic trick failed. Now they're scrambling for a new act, a new audience, but nothing hits the same. Because the truth is, they never had real power. They just had rehearsed control. And you've walked off their stage for good. Number 6, you're not just saying no, you're dismantling their control system. You saying no now hits different, and they feel it. This isn't just a boundary anymore, it's a disruption in their entire system. You used to be the one they could count on to bend, to give in, to compromise yourself in the name of peace. You were predictable, and they built their control around that. Your guilt was their leverage. Your empathy was their backdoor access. But now, you're shutting all of it down. You've become unreadable, and that's terrifying for people who only knew how to function when they were pulling your strings. They weren't prepared for your no to come with peace. They expected backlash, explanations, maybe a breakdown. Instead, they're getting silence and clarity. And that's messing with their programming. Because their power never came from who they were. It came from how well they could control who you were. And now, without access to your emotional dashboard, they're glitching like a system that's lost its mainframe. This isn't just about you being unavailable, it's about you becoming immune. You don't respond to guilt tripping anymore. You don't fall for the tears. You don't jump to fix what they break. That calm, detached no you give now. That's psychological warfare to a manipulator. It's the equivalent of pulling the battery out of their remote control. It's not just rejection, it's disconnection. And they don't know what to do without access. They're realizing they never truly knew you. They only knew how to use you. And now that you're out of reach, they're left standing in front of a locked door with all their old tricks, completely useless. You've become unprogrammable, unreachable. Not because you're cold, but because you finally understand what they were doing. And understanding is power. You're not just protecting your peace, you're deleting the entire software they used to run on, and that's why they're spiraling. Number 7, your yes was a contract. They were defaulting on grace. Your yes was never casual. It carried weight. Every time you agreed, showed up, forgave, extended grace, you weren't just being nice. You were signing a spiritual contract, a deep, unwritten agreement that said, I see your flaws, but I choose to love you anyway. I see your mess, and I'll still hold space for you. That kind of yes was a rare currency, priceless, but they treated it like it was disposable. They thought your grace was unlimited. They mistook your compassion for weakness. They kept coming back, withdrawing more, offering less, and breaking the terms of the agreement every time. And still, you gave them room to make it right. Not because you were naive, but because you were loyal to your own heart. You meant every yes. You were all in. They weren't. They abused the contract. They defaulted over and over. And now the karmic court is open. Grace has been revoked. All the things they received from you, your loyalty, your energy, your peace, your presence, are being called back. Not because you're being petty, but because the spiritual overdraft hit its limit. You gave chances like oxygen, and they treated it like spare change. Now, the divine system is balancing the books. They got away with manipulation for so long because they were living off of your good karma. But that account is frozen, and you're not bitter. You're just no longer the bank. You're not chasing. You're not fixing. You're not begging anyone to understand the value of what you gave. You're just standing still, watching the repossession happen. Everything they built using your grace is collapsing. The fake confidence, the stolen peace, the relationships they used your light to sustain, it's all going. Because spiritual contracts may not come with paperwork, but they absolutely come with consequences. And now, you're not the one pleading. You're the bailiff at the door, calm, centered, and finally, done. Number 8. They needed a mirror. You became a threat instead. They didn't want your honesty. They wanted your agreement. They weren't looking for growth. They were looking for an echo. Something to bounce their illusions off of and have them returned undisturbed. But you didn't reflect back the image they curated. You reflected back the truth. You saw through the act. You called out the contradictions. You questioned what didn't add up. And for people addicted to the mask, that kind of clarity is dangerous. At first, they were drawn to your light. They said things like, "You're different. You see things no one else sees. You just get me." But once they realized your light wasn't just warm, it was revealing, they turned. Suddenly you were too intense, too sensitive, too much. They wanted your insight, but only if it kept them comfortable. The moment your presence started to challenge the stories they told themselves, you became a threat. You didn't attack them. You just stopped participating in the illusion. You stopped laughing at the lies. You stopped pretending dysfunction was normal. You stopped lowering your frequency to match theirs, and that alone was enough to offend them. Because for people who live in delusion, truth doesn't feel like help. It feels like harm. And rather than face themselves, they decided to attack the mirror. That's why they twisted your character. That's why they told others you changed. That's why they tried to convince people you were cold or arrogant. It was all projection. You weren't dangerous. You were just honest. And your honesty highlighted how fake everything around them had become. So instead of rising up to meet the truth, they tried to bring you down to match the lie. But the chosen don't beg to be understood by the blind. You don't dull your truth to make liars feel safe. You don't water down your insight to fit into shallow spaces. You were never made to mirror the world's ego. You were made to reflect what's real. And if they couldn't handle that, it's not because you were too much. It's because their illusion was too fragile. Number 9. They're not sorry. They're panicking about losing access. They're not sorry. Not really. What they feel now isn't remorse or regret for the damage they caused. It's panic. Panic because the system they relied on to control you, to siphon your energy, to bend your will, has failed. They're scrambling because the access point they had, the one that let them push your buttons, guilt you into submission, or pull you back when you tried to leave, that door is slammed shut, and it terrifies them. They don't mourn the bridge they burned. They mourn losing the connection that let them keep you on their leash. They don't apologize because they're genuinely sorry. They're calculating their next move. Every call, every message, every act of concern is just another attempt to hack back in, to regain control, to find that vulnerable spot they once exploited. But this time, it's different. You're no longer responding the way you used to. You're not reacting. You're not bending. And that breaks their playbook. What you're seeing now is withdrawal, like an addict going through detox. The craving to plug back into your energy, your time, your forgiveness is intense. But unlike before, the circuits are down. Your boundaries are firewalls. Your no is a locked gate. They can't find a way in because you rewired your system. You became unhackable. So all the sorries you hear, they're not apologies. They're panic disguised as remorse. It's their survival mode kicking in, not their conscience. And recognizing that difference is liberating. Because once you know it's panic, not pity, you stop feeling pressured to give in. You stop confusing desperation for change. They lost access, and with it, their power. And that is exactly where you wanted to be all along. Number 10, your survival mode was their opportunity. They didn't love your strength, they loved your survival mode. When you were hurting, vulnerable, struggling just to keep your head above water, you were their perfect source. You gave when you had nothing left to give. You showed up despite the cracks, despite the pain, despite the exhaustion, and they soaked it all up. Because it wasn't strength to them, It was an opportunity, an open door to take more, ask more, expect more, without ever giving back. They praised you for being strong or resilient, but what they really meant was they loved how you carried their weight on top of your own. Your survival mode made them comfortable because it kept things predictable. They knew you'd answer their calls, forgive their mistakes, and keep the peace, even when it cost you everything. They didn't want you thriving. They wanted you surviving, just enough to keep the lights on for their needs. But here's the truth that cuts through the noise. Your healing terrifies them. Because healing means boundaries. Healing means saying no when you used to say yes. Healing means reclaiming your time, your energy, your voice. Healing means you're no longer a dependable backup plan for their chaos. Your transformation isn't just growth, it's a threat to their entire dynamic. When you start truly healing, the roles flip. They can no longer rely on your survival mode to carry their weight. Suddenly they're exposed. Suddenly the strong person they praised isn't available anymore. And instead of stepping up, instead of respecting your growth, they flee. Because your healing demands accountability. It demands change. And they're not ready for that. Your healing is a declaration. You're done being their safety net. You're done being their emotional warehouse. You're done surviving on scraps of their approval. And that truth, that's what makes them run. Because for the first time, you're not just surviving, you're thriving. And that's a game changer. Number 11. Your silence wasn't peaceful, it was suppression. For the longest time you were told silence was strength. Stay calm, they said. Don't make waves. Keep the peace. So you swallowed your truth, muted your pain, and folded your needs into the background. But that silence, it wasn't peace, it was suppression. You weren't strong, you were complicit in your own erasure. You became the quiet observer of your own suffering, thinking you were protecting yourself or others. But really, you were hiding behind a mask that allowed them to keep control. They liked it that way. Your silence was their playground. It gave them free rein to cross boundaries, to manipulate, to gaslight without challenge. You were their safe space to act out without consequences, because your voice was locked away, held hostage by fear, shame, or doubt. It wasn't power, it was permission. Permission for them to treat you as less than, to rewrite your story, to paint you as the problem when you dared to speak up. But now, that silence is shattered. Your voice isn't a whisper anymore, it's a roar. It's raw, unfiltered, and unapologetic. You're not reciting poetry to soothe wounds. You're delivering indictments that demand accountability. Your words expose patterns, call out lies, and refuse to let the narrative be stolen again. This isn't about being nice or keeping the peace. It's about reclaiming your truth, your space, and your power. The quiet compliance is over. You're not the background noise. They're the ones losing the audience. Your voice, once silenced and suppressed, has become their reckoning. And this time, it's not about forgiveness or forgetting. It's about making sure the damage is seen, named, and stopped. Because your silence wasn't strength, it was a vacuum they filled with control. Now that vacuum is full, and you're the one holding the microphone. Number 12. They called you too much because you saw too much. They labeled you too much as if it was a flaw, as if your awareness was a problem to fix. But you weren't too much. You were too awake, too sensitive to the undercurrents, too tuned into the invisible signals, too sharp to be fooled by surface-level charm or false smiles. You noticed things others ignored or were blind to, the hesitation in their voice, the contradiction in their actions, the silent wars behind polite conversations. Your intuition wasn't a curse, it was your superpower. Because while they were busy playing roles, spinning stories, and hiding behind masks, you were reading the script from the shadows. You saw the inconsistencies. You felt the tension they tried to bury. You connected the dots they hoped no one would notice. That made you dangerous, not because you wanted to hurt anyone, but because truth is a threat to those who thrive on deception. And that's why they feared you. Not because you were loud or emotional, but because you were clear. You could dismantle their narratives with a glance. You could call out their lies without even raising your voice. You weren't extra. You were deeply rooted in something real, while they floated on illusions. That clarity made you the one they couldn't control, the one they couldn't silence. So, when they said you were too much, they were really saying they were too afraid. Afraid that you'd expose what they tried to keep hidden. Afraid that your sharpness would unravel their carefully crafted facades. You weren't a problem. You were the solution they never wanted to face. And that's exactly why they pushed back. You didn't overstep. You saw over everything. And that sight was a mirror they couldn't bear to look into. Number 13. You're not burning bridges. You're burning tunnels. This isn't about a casual see you later or a quiet exit. You're not just walking away from them. You're erasing every secret passage they built to sneak back into your world. They didn't just get invited. They found hidden tunnels, back doors, and shortcuts to reach you without permission. Now you're not just shutting the door. You're setting those tunnels on fire. Every route they use to manipulate, gaslight, or control you is collapsing. They thrived in the shadows, slipping in when you weren't looking, making deals behind your back, taking without asking. But you're done letting them play hide-and-seek with your energy and your trust. This is an extraction mission, not a retreat. You're tearing down the infrastructure they depended on to bypass your boundaries. It's not petty revenge, it's reclaiming sovereignty. You're reclaiming the map to your life and burning every shortcut they used. No more secret meetings, no more surprise attacks disguised as friendly visits, no more unauthorized access to your peace. You're making sure their next attempt to come back is met with rubble and ash. And this is why they panic. They're used to slipping through cracks, to exploiting cracks, to weaving through tunnels you didn't even know existed. But now, there's only one way in, and that's through the front gate you control. No more infiltration, no more silent invasions. You're not burning bridges, you're burning tunnels. The bridges are still there for those who truly respect your space, but the tunnels? Gone, destroyed, incinerated. Because you're not just done with them. You're done with their whole system of sneaking back in. This is a new era, one where you control who gets access, where your peace isn't a playground, where you're not just leaving, you're securing the perimeter. Number 14. You're not just done being used, you're becoming unapproachable to manipulators. You're not just done being used, you're evolving into a force they simply can't reach anymore. It's not about slapping up walls that can be scaled or doors that can be picked. It's about shifting your entire presence so that manipulators don't even know you exist. Your energy stops broadcasting easy target or emotional ATM. Instead, it sends out a clear, unmissable signal, sovereignty. You're not open season. You're a fortress they don't have the code to. This transformation doesn't come from bitterness or isolation. It comes from deep-rooted self-respect and fierce clarity. You're no longer broadcasting SOS signals to the spiritually bankrupt because you've tuned them out completely. Their tricks, their games, their emotional blackmail bounce off you like rain on a shield. They don't see your vulnerability anymore because you don't carry it where they can reach it. You've moved beyond that. When you were once a refuge for the lost and the manipulative, you're now a closed chapter to those not walking in truth. They don't get the satisfaction of decoding your moods, of twisting your kindness into leverage, or of sneaking in under the radar. You've become unreadable. Like a puzzle missing pieces they'll never find, you frustrate their attempts to understand or control you. Being unapproachable isn't about arrogance or shutting people out. It's about reclaiming your space so fully that it's impossible to be used again. You've become a presence that demands respect simply by existing. The manipulators feel it. They sense that no matter how they try, you're out of their reach. You're unreachable, untouchable, and completely out of their league. You're not just done being used, you're rewriting the rules of engagement. And from now on, only those who come with truth and integrity will get through. You've crossed the line from being a tool to a titan in your own story. This isn't just about saying no anymore. It's about reclaiming every inch of your power and refusing to hand it over to anyone who sees you as a resource to exploit. The era of being used, drained, and silenced is officially over. You're no longer the quiet background actor in someone else's drama. You are the director, the lead, and the producer of your life's masterpiece. This transformation isn't just about protecting yourself. It's about honoring the immense strength it took to get here, the battles fought in silence, the wounds carried in secret, the resilience forged in fire. Every boundary you set, every tunnel you burn, every truth you speak out loud is a victory lap for your spirit. Remember, this power you hold isn't for everyone. It's not a beacon for those stuck in manipulation or control. It's a fortress for your soul and a lighthouse for those who walk with integrity. You're done being used, yes, but more importantly, you're done allowing anything less than your full, unapologetic sovereignty. So hold your head high, stand fierce. Know that what you've built within yourself is unshakable, unbreakable, and unapologetically you. The world may try to reach in, but now you hold the keys. And the only ones invited inside are those who bring truth, respect, and real connection. You're not just done being used, you're done playing small. This is your rise, this is your reclaiming, and it's nothing short of extraordinary. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join the community where we're all about empowerment and truth. Like the video. If you're ready to step into your power, drop a comment below to share your story or thoughts. I want to hear from you. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, please share it with them. Together we rise stronger. Thanks for being here. Let's keep moving forward, unstoppable and unbreakable. God bless you.